Consumer confidence in the U.S. dropped this month for the third consecutive month to 95.7. It's the lowest point this year. Today, the Fed is kicking off 2 days of meetings ahead of another expected interest rate hike. The Fed trying to slow the economy without pushing it off a cliff. Record high inflation has 58% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. Appearing virtually yesterday, President Biden trying to temper recession fears, talking about the jobs numbers.
We're not going to be in a recession, in my view. The employment rate is still one of the lowest we've had in history. We'll see some coming down, but I don't think we're going to, God willing, I don't think we're going to see a recession.
God willing. Joining me now, CNBC senior economics reporter Steve Liesman and former Obama White House press secretary Robert Gibbs. So, Steve, how should we be reading this latest consumer confidence report? It's over 90, so the economy is still healthy, but the numbers mostly dropped this year.
Yeah, I mean, the country's in a foul mood, Andrea. I think that's the way to think about it. High prices, inflation have really soured people on both the current state of the economy and the economic outlook. Whether or not numbers like this are going to determine outcomes is a different question. We've seen Americans be in lousy moods before and go out and spend. For example, if you look at the consumer confidence numbers after 9/11, they were buying a whole lot of cars, but in a lousy mood. Right now, I think the real issue is what's happening with American pocketbooks right now, which for low and moderate income Americans, prices are rising faster than their wages and their ability to keep up. So I think that's a big part of what's happening. There's a certain political element to this, and for that I'd go to another survey. Our CNBC All America survey finds, for example, that Republicans think the economy is poor by eight times more, 8 to 3 measure than the Democrats, or 80% to 30%. They think the economy will get worse, 7 to 3. So there's a certain political aspect to this, but right now Americans are in a foul mood, and the concern is that foul mood will lead to lower spending and perhaps exacerbate any economic downturn we experience.
And I want to question you about something that Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, of course, said on Meet the Press to Chuck on Sunday, somewhat of a pre-buttal to the GDP numbers that are going to come out later this week. And she's arguing that 2 successive quarters of a retraction does not equal a recession, saying that the NBER is going to look at other data, including jobs. Take a look.
A common definition of recession is 2 negative quarters of GDP growth, or at least that's something that's been true in past recessions. When we've seen that, there has usually been a recession. But I do want to emphasize what a recession really means is a broad-based contraction in the economy. And even if that number is negative, we are not in a recession now. And I would warn that we should be not characterizing that as a recession.
I understand that.
So is it going to be, if it is 2 consecutive quarters of contraction, will it be a recession, technically?
Not really. That's a common rule of thumb. And of course, the Treasury Secretary is correct. When you have 2 quarters almost all the time, it means we were in recession. The trouble, Andrea, gets a little complicated. We had a negative first quarter because we had this huge influx of goods from abroad that were held up by the supply chain problems with the pandemic. And so it was negative because of trade and because of inventories. But if you look at the things that mattered in the economy in the first quarter, consumer spending and businesses, they were up 3%. So that was pretty healthy. I don't think I'd count the first quarter as a negative because of those outstanding issues. I think we're going to be very close to being negative or zero this quarter. And that does have me concerned because that could come from reduced consumer spending and reduced business spending. Those are the things, Andrea, that you want to look out for and be concerned about in terms of the economy. Is do consumers pull back and do businesses pull back? It didn't happen in the first quarter, but it could be happening in the second.
And so we get to the political impact. Robert Gibbs, none of this is great for the president, but he keeps pointing to the fact that gas prices have dropped recently. So maybe that, big impact, the fuel economy is beginning to improve. What about the midterms and how this is playing?
Yeah, the challenge, Andrea, is consumer confidence is a lagging indicator, right? So just as we've seen more than a month of declining gas prices, consumer confidence isn't likely to reflect that for some time. And I think what Steve is talking about, the electorate, the people are of the country are in a foul mood. And my question, based on what happens with these numbers, what we see out of the Fed tomorrow, and then Thursday with the GDP numbers, is does it start a larger conversation? Are we in a recession? Are we not? That, again, I think has the effect of making more foul the mood that people are already in, exacerbating fears. And to Steve's point, does that lead people to start beginning to pull back in a greater way and deepen what might be coming? So I think consumer confidence gives us a pretty good sense of the environment with which the next 100 or so days before this election are going to be played out in.
Well, you know, Steve Liesman, Robert Gibbs, we're going to have to obviously watch all the data coming in this week, but there's going to be a lot of negative headlines for the White House to have to absorb, and we're going to be seeing their economic advisors, I have a feeling, coming and trying to rebut some of this. Robert Gibbs, thank you so much. Steve Liesman.